Welcome back to another video with Max Sports Management International. Now January has finished, we're going to talk about the aftermath of a transfer and what happens when the window closes, aren't we, Ronnie boy?
We are. It's gone quick. Feels like only yesterday we was in here.
Oh, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Mate.
Literally.
So obviously with the January window just behind us, Jace,
Yep.
I want to talk about what happens after the transfer of a player. What does the reality look like for a player once, they've made a big move?
Yeah, I think people sometimes miss the bit where a lot of the stuff happens right at the end.
Yeah.
Which means I'm having conversations with my players where I'm saying, okay, today you live in London, tomorrow you might live in Spain, you might live in Denmark, or you might live in Newcastle.
Mental,
as an example. Yeah, so I think that the aftermath people don't really see. So when it comes down to what happens when the window shuts, whether that's getting the family ready and you've got children and you're trying to settle and get things going there, or, again, like let's say a player has a wife and then not only are you having that conversation with the player, he's then got to go and have that conversation, which, by the way, we're packing our bags tomorrow.
Yeah.
So when it comes down to like the people behind the player, I think they miss it. I think so many people miss it. It's all great when you're watching Sky Sports News and watching what's going on at every given moment. But it's great when it happens. But also, let's not forget, you have a lot of transfers that collapse. So I'm sitting here after the window doing business, let's say, but there's also been business that hasn't happened. So the aftermath, you're not only thinking about the deals that you've done, but you're thinking about the deals that you haven't, which is tough, right?
Yeah, must be quite straining on families that people, like you said, don't see.
Yeah, definitely.
You just got to suddenly pack up and move country, leave everything behind.
Yeah, but making it a lot more positive. You normally have around 8 good years in a game. Let's say you have a 15-year career, hopefully.
Very true.
You need to really focus on that and feel happy about it, because when you started football at 6 years old and you're now 25 and you've just got the dream move that you've been working on for however many years, it's an amazing opportunity. So you really do have to make hay while the sun shines, as they say. So
yeah, definitely.
obviously there's that really positive side of it where, as an agent, you're changing people's lives, aren't you? Which is a massive part of my job, which is huge pressure, which I don't mind taking on. But it's also, you're trying to navigate of, culturally, will that player settle? Is it the right move? Do they speak the language? Is it the right pathway at the football club? So when it comes down to the aftermath, you're not just thinking about helping your player move house. You're thinking about all of the other things that go with it. And does he need to talk to the manager, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah, I often think that when players move abroad,
abroad, yeah.
How do you when everyone's talking a different language?
Yeah.
How do you
I think again, we're sitting here in England. Premier League's the best league in the world, but if you look at a lot of the Premier League clubs now, they've got foreign influx of players. So when it comes down to settling, you cannot expect a player just to hit the ground running. You definitely can't, because so many variables, isn't there? There's variables of, they might be a very, very good player, but if they don't speak the language and can't speak to the guy that plays in the position next to them, then that's a difficult thing to overcome, isn't it?
Yeah, defo. Perfect. So when a big transfer happens, obviously, like we've just touched on, players are expected to hit the ground running because of what they've done in the past, which is why they've got the big move. How do you find players navigate this pressure whilst trying to settle into a new environment?
Okay, so I do think the agent comes into this. Sometimes it's out of your control because you have to make a decision quickly, whether that's a loan on deadline day, or whether that's a move that you can't say no to, or let's say the idea is to move in the summer, but something comes in January, obviously, which is where we've sat now, being February, and it's too good of an opportunity to miss. So it's then about mentally preparing your player. So let's say you have a loan that you've just completed and then they play the next day. They might just hit the ground running and go and play great. They might not. They might be bought into, I've looked at some of Manchester City's business, and I've looked at it and thought they're rebuilding, and I'm looking at it going, okay, I really hope that they're giving that player a period of time between Jan and the summer, and then also bedding them in, getting them in for pre-season to hit for next season, because of course the fan wants them to hit the ground running, but for me, I'm looking at it as a process of, are they getting them in to bed them in for a period of time? So when it comes, and again, it's timing. Some players are used to moving, And again, I try and get it out of the way early. Go on your first loan. Go and get some experience about what it's like to move out, what it's like to be in a different country, what it's like to be in a different culture. There's players coming over in this market in particular from all over the world, and that culture is massively difficult. So when it comes down to the expectation of hitting the ground running, a manager's going to want it.
I was going to say, do you think a manager expects a player to hit the ground running, or do you think they take into consideration?
I think it's changed over time. I think modern management is very different to old school management. I think that we're going into a new direction where, we're all real human beings that understand that, it's a really difficult thing that a player's going through when they have to hit the ground running. So rather than thinking the old school mentality of, just get it and you'll be absolutely fine, it's like, okay, how can we help this individual? And some of the clubs really do have certain liaison people. They have certain people helping them with, let's say, speaking a language or anything like that. There's loads of different departments that you can help with, and obviously that's when the agent comes in, where you're really trying to help them navigate towards, you might be helping a player get a baby into nursery, or where you're going to live in terms of the right places to live, and or does your wife want to be near another player, or where the other players can sort of connect together and go out together. So you try and give them the best possible chance to be successful, don't you?
Yeah, perfect. Okay, perfect. So, what are the biggest issues players face when trying to settle into a new club?
I think expectation being a massive thing, because again, let's say a player's been bought for a big amount of money. That's not their fault, is it?
No,
definitely not. They didn't demand the price tag, the clubs did, and ultimately then that puts the expectation on the player. But I think having good people around is really, really important, whether that's club side, agent side, family side. So when I look at us and let's say we help a player move abroad, normally we will have a partner in that country, as an example, let's say. So let's say we were doing a move to Portugal. I would definitely lean on my partner out there to help us with the player to settle in. They speak the language, they understand where the right place to live is. They have people north, south, east and west in terms of where they're looking at. We've done deals together with them before, we trust them. So you're kind of really helping that. So when it comes down to taking care as an agency, you want to be able to know that you've got the reach to help your player. It's really important with that. So for me, I really do try and pride myself on that scenario. We've done 4,000 transfers in over 15 different countries. So when it comes down to helping a player settle, I actually think all of that experience helps you know. Does that make sense?
That's a lot of transfers, Joe.
I didn't do all of them. Let's not forget, my dad was the first agent in England a long, long time ago. So together combined, that's the amount we've done.
Still a lot. Okay, perfect. So is January harder than the summer to settle, do you reckon, halfway through a season?
Yeah, because normally players are filling holes in January, whether that's trying to get the right jigsaw piece to go and get promotion, try and get the jigsaw piece to fight relegation. It's an opportunity market. People don't want to do business. So if you're sitting there at Christmas, you go and get an in. No, not normally, apart from opportunities and whatever, or building, let's say, for the next season, or try and make sure you get it over the line for promotion. Why would you do that? Because you've got an injury. So if you've got an injury, you're normally then going to have to go into the market. Not because you want to go into the market. And also, if you're a club, would you want to sell in Jan? Halfway through the season? So let's say you get closer towards the end of the market and you've got a player that you've just sold for 20 million, right? Everyone knows you just made 20 million. So they're going to drive the market. So if you're then going to go and make a call on their player, they know you've just made that money. So they're going to be thinking, right, we can drive the price up.
More out of it.
Yeah, we can get more out of it. So I don't think it's the market that people want to do business. It's rather that they have to do business.
That's interesting. I've never thought of it like that.
Yeah. You wouldn't.
No, I wouldn't. Do you have more time to settle when you move young?
It's a really good question, actually. Definitely. And you know what? I've been thinking about this a lot. We've actually been having this conversation in the office that, let's say you move over from Europe, or let's say you moved from north to south or south to north. Really, it's a nice way. So when you move as a transaction, when you're a youth player, and let's say the clubs agreed a fee, you're able to go and visit that football club. Okay. Normally, when a transfer happens with a first team, it's not like you're going straight to visit that football club, spend time there. You just have to make the decision.
You just
So much
either
harder
go or you don't.
when you're a first team player. So when you're a young player, what you're able to do is you're able to settle because you're able to visit. So let's say
Right, okay.
we do a transfer for a younger player and we have 3 clubs interested. You can visit them all. You can understand their processes. You might want to talk about education. You might want to talk about finance. You might want to talk about pathway. You might want to talk about coaches. You might want to talk about living circumstances, etc., schooling, whatever. So then you can actually hit the ground running because you'd have been there for a period of time. Okay, so I think that's a really good thing that never used to be the case. Again, I talk about it a lot, but since Brexit happened, so much has changed in the industry. It's you have so much more movement within the youth market, so much more. But when it comes down to first team, you know, you obviously have an expectation that the transfer just happens. You agree to fees. You know, the player goes and understands what the finances might look like, but the agent does the job, and then you give them an understanding of what it looks like because the club isn't going to give permission to speak until they've agreed.
Yeah.
So it's hard, isn't it?
No, it's hard.
So is it different? Massively different. Moving from moving as a first team player. Massively.
So the club don't give permission to talk to the player until you've agreed a fee?
No. It happens, but
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
you're not allowed to do that. No, you're not allowed to.
You are literally
unless the club has given permission and there's been a fee. Yeah, because it's their asset. You know, until they agree to give permission, they're under contract. Within the contract, you're not allowed to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, it's the norm for a club or an agent to approach players within the first team market. But when it comes down to the youth market, it's extremely important that until the clubs agree, you can't approach a player or have permission to be able to talk to that player or family.
Right. Interesting. So how are loan transfers different to permanent deals?
Obviously, it's a part-time registration, so the paperwork's different, the timings are different. You could go on a 6-month loan, you can go on a 12-month loan, you can do a loan with option. So obviously, basically, a loan is borrowing a player, isn't it? So normally it's used for development in my world. So a player will be loaned to a football club to gain experience as a young player, or sometimes again it might be an opportunity. Let's say the club doesn't have the money now and they want to do a loan with an option. They would do it, right, okay, we'll loan that player. If they play 15 games, it automatically triggers for you to pay X amount of money on the option. Or if he doesn't hit, the club still has the option to keep them, or the club has the option to sign. But you can have it as a loan with obligation or loan with option. They're 2 different things.
So that loan you just spoke about there with the 15 game trigger, let's say.
Yeah.
I can't remember. I think there was a scenario.
It happens
a couple
a lot.
years ago where a player had played a certain amount of games and the club didn't play him anymore.
Correct, because they didn't want him or whatever. So it's a difficult.
Would you ever is that not a silly thing to do then?
Well, no, because normally it's done if there's not much else going on and the club comes in and says, right, we'll do the loan with option, but on our terms. So when you say that, but also let's say that player's not playing at their parent club, it's the best opportunity for them to go and gain the value.
Right.
So let's say they don't trigger, but they've done well.
Yeah.
They're still better off being in the shop window.
Yeah,
it's
true.
still a good idea.
Still
or
better.
let's say a club needs the money longer term and they want to deal with their PSR or whatever. There's certain ways that you can kind of deal with the transaction. Loan with options are definitely a modern thing. And a loan with obligation is it's not a new thing, but it hasn't always happened. You know, a loan with obligation means that you have to buy that player. So let's say a club are chasing promotion to Premier League. You would do a loan with option if they get to Premier League, for example. So if they play X amount of games and they get promoted, and the fees could be different. If they get promoted, it's X amount of money. If they stay in the Championship, it's another amount of money. So there's quite a lot of details that goes behind it. Quite a lot.
Crazy world. Crazy world. Some players go on loan with an option to make it permanent.
Yeah.
Again, why?
Normally, if they're not playing at the club, is the best time to go on with a loan with option. Sometimes, let's say the player is worth 10 million, okay, and they do a loan with option of 10 million. Let's say they go and play 20 really good games, they might be worth 20 million, so it could benefit that club. Vice versa, you know, it could be an opportunity for the club to think, we think that they're going to be worth that amount of money, so we'll give you the option to buy them at 15 million. But if
they change that?
No, but if they don't, let's say it's just an option, he does really, really well, they're never going to let them have him for 15 million because they'll jab him back and sell him for 25. For example.
That's what I mean. So it's
again,
not like...
That's the difference between a loan with option or an obligation. It's a big difference between the two.
So the loan with option, the parent club can just say, "Oh, we're taking it back."
You can do, but depending on the technicalities within the contract, which is...
But the obligation if he goes there has 20 really good games, you have to sell him still.
Yeah, if it's obligation, yeah.
Okay.
But again, that's the risk versus reward factor, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the negotiation within doing the transfer or loan with option, whatever.
Right, okay. So what does it look like for a family and a player after a transfer?
Okay, so again, let's say you've moved over from abroad and you're a young player and you're 18 years old. You'd normally think that the family would come with you, or that player could be really mature and they think that they're ready to move on their own. I don't think it's always a good idea. Let's say if you're going out on loan and it's the deadline day and you want to move out for to go and give it a go on your own, the club should really help you with that process. So when it comes down to the family and the players, it's really important that you've got a really good relationship where you don't just sign for that football club and tomorrow you're just left to your own devices. It's about settling. So normally the process is once you sign, you go and stay in a hotel for a week or 2 weeks. Normally that's the process.
Yeah.
Until a club, let's say you do a loan and let's say the club give you an amount of money per month to go and find an apartment. The family will come down just for the signing, then go back home if they can. And then you'll have a situation where they settle in. You have a settle in period. So they're in a hotel and then they'll view in apartments for 2 or 3 days, pick the one that they want, whether that's family involved or not. And obviously that's different for every different situation.
Yeah.
If it's a young player, it's very easy because you're just trying to find an apartment. If it's a family, you've got a lot more questions that you have to answer for. So every situation is different when it comes down to like the family and the player, because it's circumstances, isn't it, of what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah. I suppose younger players tend to go in digs a lot, don't they?
No, but that's not. This we're talking about transfers. So in terms of, I'm talking about first team stuff.
Oh, okay.
But when it comes down to that, it's good to bring it up. But obviously, we would go through a process if a young player moved, and it would be right, okay, because you would go into digs. That would be a definite.
Yeah.
Because they don't move. You can't move for non-footballing reasons. You're not allowed to. So what happens is you'd understand how the schooling would work, who they would live with. Normally it would be a digs lady, so the family go and meet the digs people and understand how they live. Let's say if you've got a specific circumstance where a player is Nigerian and they like specific food. I've known it when they've gone around their house to understand the cooking and understand how they live and what they need to do within it, or let's say it's religious reasons. We go through all of those processes with it and you try and buy into all of that. And the clubs are really good nowadays because they want them to settle quick. So when it comes down to that question is how hard is it to settle? If the clubs make it easy, they got a better chance of getting the success on the pitch.
Yeah. Okay. So we kind of just covered it a little bit there with the younger players, but how does this differ for first team players, foreign transfers and youth deals?
Yeah, again, so obviously we're talking about the aftermath of a transfer. So obviously with a young player, you can move at different times within the year. So let's say you're moving mid-season, sometimes very difficult. So it's good to actually talk about that because let's say a young player's at school.
Yeah.
Okay, and they need to finish off their exams. We know specific cases where the club has taken over the education. A player's left school, that then the family have visited to understand how the education is going to work, and that's been taken over. That's really difficult, isn't it, for a young player to have to move school or go into private education, for example. So the top Cat 1 clubs, the young players are privately educated. So they've normally got a deal with a school where they go, or they're schooled within the club. Which is obviously really easy when it comes down to moving because then you can settle in early. But flip side of that, parents are always very, very cautious of doing something mid-season. So obviously there's certain times of the year that make things a lot easier for young players. And then obviously when it comes down to first team players, obviously as an agent, if you've got a player for a period of time, you're always prepping them to what could happen. So maybe at the start of the window, which have done with a case of a player, I'm like, look, you haven't been through this before. Let me tell you what's about to happen so you can start prepping your mind for it. I could call you on deadline day and you could have a conversation where you've got to decide to move X.
Well, that's what I mean. Do you reckon, can you like kind of sniff out a scenario where a transfer might happen?
Yeah, of course. So I'm always having an understanding of, I'm having those conversations under the understanding, that's my experience, that I know these things are going to happen at some point. I just don't know exactly when they're going to happen. I don't control it. So again, at the end of the market, it's always the jigsaw puzzle. So you've got the jigsaw puzzle where one player's sold and then all of a sudden everything else clicks into place, that different positions are wanted, or let's say one player's sold, which means another player's then bought from here, which means they then might do a loan or they might drag their player back from loan. So when it comes down to loans, you've normally got a period of time where you can call a player back. So as an example of the January that just passed, we had a player that had 15 days. In the first 15 days, he was able to be called back. After that 15 days, he's locked in. So we had to know what we were going to do within the business within those first 15 days. Because then you give both clubs a period of time to either send them back or pull them back. So then we then have to sit down with the player and say, how's it going? What do you think's best? Deal with the football club to say, are we happy with this loan? Are we not? And then go from there. So when there's a big difference between the two. And we could do another video on this. It's so different between a young player moving to a first team player moving. And again, like having those experiences obviously only happens when you've done it. And I've done lots of both of them.
It sounds very complicated.
I wouldn't call it complicated, you know.
For
your job's complicated, mate. But
for you, it ain't. Because you know, for me, jeez. So yeah, like going on to this question.
Yeah.
How crucial is a good agent to help during this process?
I think it's crucial in terms of staying calm, which we spoke about. So it would be a really bad thing if I got edgy in terms of trying to get a player to commit to a situation whether I wasn't sure, whatever. It's best to just be open and transparent. Mm-hmm. But also what's really important when it comes to the transfer market is, can your agent pick up the phone to the right person to make the right decision? So as an example, let's say I wanted a player to be promoted, I'd need to go and get them to come and see my player. So if you're doing your work starting in January, you're not a good agent.
Right.
So really you want to be doing that work previously to understand that, look, our player might be coming available on loan. We think you should start looking at that situation. So sometimes you're prepping a year ahead just to alert you, this is what's happened. We have this player. He's probably going to be ready for a loan X amount of time, just to put it on your radar, this could happen. And then you're prepping for that scenario. So when it comes down to the aftermath of a transfer, people think, oh, that's just happened, that transfer.
Yeah, no, it hasn't.
Nah, it could be years in the making of a transfer. You know, we could be alerted from, so I got alerted on a European club just to tell me they're watching my player at the start of this season for next season. So if that player does well, they could be available and they might want to come forward to see if he's available. If he doesn't do well, then they're not going to pick up the phone again, are they? So people don't really understand that scenario. So it's really, really crucial to have good information. And how do you have good information is if you know what's going on in the market. And naturally, when you've been doing it a long time, you just get the feel of what's going on for a period of time. And you don't get nervous about it. You just understand at different points in the market, things start happening and ramping up. It's just normal for me now, but it wouldn't be normal to your players that haven't been through it. So when you're looking at a 28-year-old that's had 7 transfers, they're calm the whole way through the market. Don't worry, I know something's going to happen. You know, when you've got a young player that's never been through it before, they get really, really edgy on the scenario. So again, it's massively different from ages, from timing, and you know, obviously players all move at different times. They go on loan at different times. They get transfers at different times. So
good. So last question I've got for you is, why is it vital to have an agent that has been through this process before?
Okay, so obviously we've touched on that, but when I say it's vital, obviously everything I've just spoken about, I can't talk about it unless I've done it. So when you're going to represent a player or you're understanding the scenario or going into a chairman's office, I think it's vital to have an agent that's been through that process to understand the levels of the market. If they've never done a Premier League deal before, how are they going to get you the best deal possible?
Yeah, exactly.
If they've never done a National League deal before, how are they going to know the levels? I've had situations where players earn a lot of money and I've had to navigate the deal that we might be, they might earn £10,000 a week, let's just say, and they're going to go on loan to League Two. It happens. What's the recovery scenario? Can you be a realist to get that deal done? That club might only have £1,000 a week to pay, but he's on 10,000. How do you navigate the deal? So it's really, really crucial to understand what's possible and what's not. So then when it comes down to working with the football club the other end, it's actually understanding the process of, well, if they really believe in that player, they will let him go for that money for a period of time because it's called development.
Yeah.
So then when it comes down to having the right agent to do that job, of course you're going to lean on the ones that have had experience. So naturally, going back to previous conversations that we've had, you really want to lean on the agents that have done the business. Otherwise, you can't even have the conversations.
No.
Because, you know, it's crucial to have the right advice. It's crucial to have an agent that's done transactions, and it's crucial to really kind of go for the full circle scenario where once you've done the transfer, can they provide you with the attention that you need? And is it crucial to be with the agent that can actually get you the deal that you want? And it's hard because I have situations where I don't get the players what they want, and they don't get the right loan, or they don't, you know, and I have to be honest about those scenarios. You know, I don't do every deal in the market. It's tough because sometimes they want experience and you're trying to go and get an 18-year-old out on loan and they're going to pick a 28-year-old.
Yeah.
I don't choose that. Again, honesty. So it's crucial to have that rather than saying, oh yeah, I'm going to do that and everything's going to be fine. Then it doesn't happen. Then you're left in the lurch. So then you just got to understand it over time. So it's crucial to have that right advice, isn't it?
Yeah, and as well, as long as you're honest with players, like you said, they haven't really got...
Yeah.
Not going to be annoyed
navigation.
If something doesn't happen. They're not expecting it anyway, are they?
Correct.
No, but anyway, that wraps up my questions, Jace.
Cool.
Been a pleasure again.
As always, mate.
And until next time. That wraps up another video, so thank you guys for watching. If you do have any questions for Jace that you want me to ask him, make sure you leave them in the comments below. But until next time, make sure you subscribe.
Yes, Ronnie boy.
Love it, Jace. Hollywood, here we go.